Ask me how I'm living, I'm telling them great. Ask me how I did it, I'm telling them grace. Yeah, yeah, hey. Ask me how I did it, I'm telling them grace. Ask me how I'm living, I'm telling them great. Ask me how I did it, I'm telling them grace. Ask me how I'm living, I'm telling them great. New me, no time to waste. Look at me, you see I don't play. I keep running, no out of shape. Need a hero, go find a cape. New me, no time to waste.
What up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of The Real Love in Basketball. I'm your co host, Coach Lee.
Yeah, and I'm Daryl Lamartel. Y'all know what it is.
We got yet another great, spectacular guest on the show today. We got some good news, some good information. Welcome, Coach. We call you Coach, we call you Mr.
Coach Red Jenkins, that's fine.
Coach Red Jenkins, one of the most notable and well known people in this area in the state of Virginia. Sorry, see, we have a very informal podcast,
Yes, good.
and so Daryl loves to just do things while I'm trying to intro. It throws me all the way off, and I'm like trying to give you a great recommendation, great conversation, and all I see is just arms going.
Hey,
across
that's what
the
happened when you got a two-man crew. You know, you got to make it happen. You know what I mean?
Anyway,
It ain't easy trying to come up and build. You know what I mean?
back to my intro. Yes, Coach Red Jenkins. He is very well known in the state of Virginia and really around the globe, right?
Well, I've done clinics in Puerto Rico and Mexico, so
Around the globe, like I
Maybe.
said.
maybe.
So, like I said earlier, a lot of people, we go into this conversation with you. They have you. Have you done podcasts before?
No.
Okay, so this is a show. We changed this into a show. So, I know this might be new to you, but I know a lot of people. I've seen some interviews that you've done and stuff, and people like to just dig in the basketball side, which is what the Real Love in Basketball is about. However, today we are going to kind of just get the other side of Coach Jenkins. Can we do that?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
Look, before we get started, I'm excited because I heard a lot about you.
Yes.
I never, saw you in action, and but everybody talk about you, and just for the short time we talked about before we aired, Noah's a wealth of knowledge and understanding and wisdom in this game. And doing this project I'm doing with Boo, I have learned to appreciate the the uh, the legends in the game. A lot of times you can hear somebody's name and you just be like, oh, okay, you go somewhere else. But I've learned to when I hear a name and somebody talk highly of them, I go research them. I get enthralled with their story and just understanding who they are and how they became to be who they are. So I'm excited about this to hear your story and your journey.
Show today. Let alone, just for the record, he's got a whole gymnasium named after him. I hope one day I can have that happen for me.
Clap it up for that.
WT, which will be changed, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But WT Woodson is named. The gym is named after Mr. Paul Red Jenkins, and so that's where I coach at. For those of you guys who are wondering, so it's an amazing journey. It's amazing. It's funny that I'm here. So backstory. I don't know if you know, but backstory. I've known Mr. Jenkins almost majority of my from my teenage years to adulthood because him and my father have been good friends, and he was my father's Adidas Connect back in the day, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I would always see Mr. Jenkins come up to the house and drop off all these boxes and stuff, especially when we were at Lee Brook in Springfield.
Right.
But I ain't know nothing about nothing.
Yeah.
I just
That's what I'm saying. Like learning to ask questions about who people are.
Yeah.
Because you every day or every time you dropped off a box and you hear it, but you never like enthralled yourself and let your pique your curiosity.
Listen, all I knew is that was Red. I was like, "Who's Daddy outside talking to?" Oh, that's Red. It's
Yeah.
Red. And then when I would, get into basketball, I would come outside and he'd be like, "Daddy would introduce me to him." But that's to your point. I mean, my dad has always been connected, and I'd be sitting at tables or in midst of conversations with people, and then like, "Oh, that's." So then when I got to Woodson, and then it was Red Jenkins, and everything came for, and I'm like, "That." Yo, I didn't know he was this big. Like, I didn't know he was a legend like
Feel
this.
bamboozled, man. You did
Yes,
it to yourself.
Yes and no, but then like people would be like, "Oh, how do you get here and all that kind of stuff?" And I'd be quick to name drop. Oh, I know Mr. Jenkins
Right.
because he knows my dad. So, but that's been the backstory. So, with that being said, tell us who Red Jenkins was before this legendary coach.
Well, I was born in a little town in West Virginia, Beckley, West Virginia, in the southern part of the state. And when I was 5 years old, I lived 2 houses from the elementary school. I saw these 2 guys working to build a court. They literally cut a court out of the side of the hill because West Virginia is nothing but hills. And they were picking rocks, and I would help them carry the rocks away from the court. And I helped them build a basketball court. And when they finished the court and put the hoops up, one of them lifted me up and let me make a basket. And I've been hooked on the game ever since.
Wow.
But when I was 10 years old, my mother got remarried and I came to D.C. I lived out in Tacoma, and then I lived in Tacoma Park. And then in 1948, we moved out to Virginia. I went to Groveton Elementary School. And since I left West Virginia, we had a 6th grade team in the elementary school. In the county, there were 14 schools, and we played in that league. And I always wanted to make the 6th grade team. And when I was a 5th grader, I made the 6th grade team, made 1 trip, got in the game, made 1 assist, and my mother called me to Washington the next day. So I had to leave there and leave my team, came to D.C., and nobody played basketball in D.C. They love football because of the Redskins, and they played baseball because of the Senators. But basketball was not big in D.C. in the 40s. And so I just thought I was a baseball player until I saw one, and I couldn't hit a curveball with a Hobie surfboard. So baseball wasn't really my game. But my best friend was a 3-time All-Met. So he said, Red, come out for basketball. And I think the coach kept me because I was best friends with the team's best player. But I got hooked on the game. I said, I like this. This is fun. So I went to Shepherd College after I graduated, and they promised me that if I walked on and made the team, they would give me some financial help. So I started working in the summer, and when I got there, I'd stay in the gym 5-6 hours a day. I just enslaved myself to the game, and where I was the 7th man in high school, by the time I was a sophomore in college, I started about half the games. Nice. So it just shows you, that's what you do. You work, and then my coach left, and so when my coach left, the coach that came in didn't like the city game. If you didn't shoot a layup with your right knee up and your right hand behind the ball like they did in the Neanderthal age, the guy was an old school to say the least. Mm-hmm. He just didn't like the city game because I threw behind the back passes. I shot dipper layups. I shot off the wrong foot drives off the board. And in practice, I'd just kill everybody, but he would play me to help him win. But
he wasn't fond of your game.
No, he wasn't fond of my game. But anyhow, so I left there and ended up at George Washington University, and I worked out with the team all spring, and I did very well. And the day before the season started, I was playing touch football for my fraternity and got 5 teeth knocked out. Oh. So I was going to miss practice for 2 weeks. I went to see the coach, and he told me very frankly, good guy, Mr. Reinhardt. He was Red Auerbach's coach in college at GW, and he's in the Helms Foundation Hall of Fame. Honest guy. He said, Red, he said, the fellas tell me you're a pretty good player and you'll make the team, but he said you won't play. Because in those days, the old coaches, they played 5 guys, and if somebody had a heart attack or fouled out, then the 6th man played. He said, there's a coaching job over at Gonzaga, a freshman team. He said, you're going to miss a lot of practice. And he said, it'd be a hard year for you sitting on the bench because I know you want to play. So why don't you get into coaching? So I went over to Gonzaga, and lo and behold, the guy that was the coach at Gonzaga, the high school coach, was my summer league coach because when I left Shepherd, I wanted to go to AU. And I came down and played for American University. And my friend, who was a 3-time All-Met, I got him on the team with me. So we played for AU in the summer against Maryland, against GW, against Georgetown, all the big teams. And both of us were in top 5 in the league in scoring. So, and I was playing one night, and the AU coach came down to see me play, and I laid an egg in the first half, scored 2 points. And Morgan Wooten is sitting in a car, a convertible, smoking a cigar. And I didn't know who he was, but a lot of his DeMatha players came to my playground when I worked for DC Recreation. So he said, Red. I said, who in the hell is this guy, And he said, you had a rough first half, didn't you? And I said, you need Pinkerton to tell you that I had a rough first half? He said, listen, you're going to have a good second half. Morgan is the world's greatest, motivator.
Yes.
And the second half, I scored 23, ended up with 25, but the AU coach left at halftime. So I didn't get my scholarship to AU, but he did say if you pay your way the first semester, then we'll give you a scholarship the second semester.
Nice.
But I had at Shepherd, I had everything taken care of, and my mother had paid for my first year to get me there. So I decided to go and play at Concord College down in southern West Virginia, but that didn't work out. My car broke down coming home. If you know where southern West Virginia is, you can't get there anyway unless you got a car.
Right.
There's no buses, trains, or planes go to Princeton, West Virginia. So I ended up at GW and I ended up coaching my freshman, coaching the freshmen at Gonzaga. It was a great experience. I had some really great kids, and Gonzaga was an academic school. We practiced down in a swimming pool. You had to go from the athletic director's office down in a swimming pool, and that's where we practiced. And they invited me to coach the All-Stars, freshman All-Stars at the end of the year against DeMatha, who was the league champion. And so coached my first All-Star game, and we won that. And Morgan Wooten, when we played at DeMatha, the guy that coached DeMatha was a guy named Murray Arnold. He ended up coaching with the Chicago Bulls and coaching UT Chattanooga. Great coach. They beat us 82-80 in overtime, and I was disappointed. And I was in Morgan's office, and I said, "That's a tough way to lose." He said, "You didn't lose." I said, "What do you mean we didn't lose? We just lost."
Right.
He said, "Are they learning fundamentals?" I think they are. "Are you teaching them what they need to go to the next level?" I think you are. He said, "You're doing a great job."
So let's jump back for a second. So you went from West Virginia to Tacoma, Maryland.
Yes.
That's nowadays that's like two opposite sides of the spectrum. Was there a culture shock with that, or was there?
Well, in West Virginia, we had that dirt court,
Right.
and when I came to DC, it was like coming to heaven. The playground was 2 blocks from Tacoma Elementary.
Yeah.
We could go down to the playground and play basketball, play all sports, and so it was like going to heaven.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. And then when I came out to Virginia, we didn't have a gym at Mount Vernon. I'm an old guy. I'm 87 years old. I graduated from high school in 1954. We had no gym. They built a gym the year after I left. We had to get on an old bus and drive down to Fort Belvoir and practice at Specker Fieldhouse. But I got hooked on the game. I patterned my game after a guy named Dick Grote. Dick Grote was a 3-time All-American at Duke and a great player. And in the service league in the 50s, everybody had to serve 6 months. And so Fort Belvoir had a really good team, but there were probably 20 NBA stars playing in that league, and he averaged 36 points a game.
Wow.
And Paul Arizin from, who was an all-time All-Pro, was in the league. It was and I'd go to all the games and watch him play, and he practiced. And
Did you have any schools that you like while you were going through this transition of hooping, and then you started to watch the game? Was there anywhere before you got to college? Was there any school like you just, I hope I can just get to this school and try to play, or were you kind of just open?
I was a baseball player, like I said, and they promised me if I walked on, made the baseball team, that they would give me some assistance at Shepherd. But when I got there, the gym was brand new, seated about 2,000. I mean, the baseball team practiced in a cow field, so basketball was first class. And that league was a pretty good league. And so I just decided I'd go to work,
So what the coach told you, all right, well, let's I don't think you'll make the team, but you're going to sit the bench. So let's transition you to coaching. When you heard that, did that spark your interest? Like, okay, let's see, or did it kind of like diminish? Like, no, I'm a player. That transition from player to coach can be a little bit from what a lot of us.
If you love the game, it's competition.
Wow.
So I like the competitive thing about coaching, and I like the teaching aspect of coaching. My major was physical education at George Washington University, and fortunately, I had all the coaches from Mount Vernon were now at Annandale. Because they built Annandale in 1955. So when I graduated from GW, I spent a lot of time at the teen center at Annandale playing, and they needed a JV coach, and the football coach was a great guy, Ed Henry, won the state championship in '65 at Annandale. But he said, our basketball coach really needs some help because we got a biology teacher and a shop teacher coaching the JV and freshmen. So we need somebody with a little basketball background. And I said, no problem. So they got me the job. And so I coached the JVs at Annandale for 3 years. And I found out about the real things in coaching. The defending JV champion was Mount Vernon, and we beat them in the first game 39-33. And the next day, the head coach said, Red, send Atherton and Frosty Staples up to the varsity. So I lost my two best players. And I found out very quickly what coaching on the lower level is about. It's not about you winning. It's about developing players
100%.
that can help the varsity coach win. So 100%. I did that. Those they didn't have any kind of out of season program. And the first year I was assistant there, I took the team over to Georgetown and played in the Jelliff League, thanks to Morgan Wooten. And 2 out of the 3 years that I was there, we were in the Final Four in the region. And it was a football school, but we basketball, got a shot in the arm. So it was, Annandale was a great experience. And then after your next question, I'll tell you how I got the head job at Woodson.
Okay. So what do you think the game, and Daryl, cut me off if you ever, because I can go all day.
I know you can. Trust me, I know you can.
Was the game very, very played really, in your opinion, very different, which I know it was, but just here, what is the game like back then compared to now?
Well, then the game was more of a fundamental game. Everybody had good patterns. They ran good stuff. Today, when I go to a lot of games, I'm still trying to figure out what they're doing. It's just like up and down. It looks to me like organized chaos, but we were much more patterned then, Nowadays, it's a lot different. Everybody runs the same offense. Everybody runs motion offense. Everybody runs a high pick and roll. And when I was at Paul VI, after I left Woodson, after 35 years, people like to run the high pick and roll, but we trapped the high pick and roll every time they ran it, and they stopped running it.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time I saw Chuck Daly, the guy who was the Detroit Pistons coach, he said, Red, you still trapping the high pick and roll? I said, every time they run it. And he did it on the NBA level and won 2 NBA championships. So I don't know why more people don't do that, especially late in the clock, in college, when the clock runs down and they run that last high pick and roll. If you trap the ball and they make them make one pass, they don't get a shot off. So to me, the difference in the game is all the coaches, when I coach, were strategists. Everybody had a plan, and everybody scouted, and strategy was a major part of the game. Today, and I don't blame the head coaches in high school, because in AAU, sometimes they get a coach who just doesn't really know the game, and he wants to win. He doesn't have time to teach fundamentals like good footwork or whatever. They just get it up and down, and they depend on talent to win
all the time.
And to me, I coached a lot of all-star games. As a matter of fact, I coached 9 and won 7. And if Sonny Vaccaro had given me a time to practice the last one, I did in Raleigh, North Carolina, we went there. We had a walk around and had 1 hour of shoot around, and we played the next day. It was crazy. When I first coached the All-Star game for him in Pittsburgh, the Dapper Dan, we were there all week.
Oh, nice.
And when you can prepare, you win.
Nice.
So.
Can we talk about that a little bit, Dapper Dan, and how the All-Star, we know Sonny was, one of the first to start the All-Star games.
He was, yes.
And you coming from the area, what was your mindset, or, other coaches and players' mindset when he was starting that, seeing it now, how the game is AAU is pretty much all-star teams and all that stuff. Got the McDonald's game and all these different brands of all-star games. How was it back then and seeing that? Did you understand what it was?
Oh, I did. The reason I coached the Dapper Dan for Sonny was 2 weeks before I coached the McDonald's All-American game. They coached the East team, and the other team had Isaiah Thomas and a bunch of good players. And we had Ralph Sampson and James Worthy and Dominique Wilkins. It was an experience of a lifetime to coach players like that, because you don't find those guys at Woodson, I can tell you that. and so it was fun, but it was structured. We ran stuff. I have a sideline quick break that we run. I have a little offense off end. It wasn't a lot of set patterns, but off our sideline quick break, we did a lot of interesting things. So we won that game, and Howard Garfinkel Sonny needed a coach for his Dapper Dan. In 1979, there were so many good players. Usually, the Pennsylvania All Stars played the U.S. All Stars in Pittsburgh. But that one year, there were so many good players, he had to do a two-night tournament. So there was an East team, which I coached, and Garfinkel was my assistant. And there was a Pennsylvania All Star. Sam Bowie played for Pennsylvania. And there was a West Midwest, and there was a South team. So there were four good teams. And I think that we ran my offense. We ran my sideline quick break, and we structured, and we won the first game against 100, 111, 105. We won the championship game 109 to 95.
That
So
was the defense.
yes, well, hey, with players like that, that's a thing, Leah. Defense is relative. People think that if you hold a team to 50 points a game, that you're a great defensive team. Well, if you score 52, it's point differential. My best year at Woodson, we averaged, in 1969, we averaged 80.5 and held teams to 50.5, a 30-point differential. So, in those All-Star games, everybody's good. And I don't watch the McDonald's All-American game now because it's just a dunk, three-point shot, and they throw the ball full court. There's no pattern, no structure. If you're a basketball aficionado, you want to go see some strategy. You want to see some structure. You want to see what the team's trying to do. And I'm going to come to your games this year. I told Pat Neary, I'm going to come to your games a couple of times this year because I'm pretty sure I know you have a scheme.
I do.
And
I have no choice. I don't have just a bunch of huge athletes, no shade.
No.
But I need some 6-footers and some just dogs. But with what we got, when we just gotta make things work through strategy.
Well,
100%.
People asked me about Woodson, and we won 615 games over my coaching career. And at Woodson, we beat a lot of, like T.C. Williams, for example. I mean, they were loaded every year, and we would play a little matchup zone. We would play a little control game and beat them 51-50. And I remember Damon Jackson walked off the court, the guy that played at Georgetown. He said, "Coach," because he was one of my players I took over to Charlie Weber. He says, "How did we lose to that?" and so you have an all-black team, all athletic as hell, and we just controlled the tempo. And we, when Mike Krzyzewski came to see the game, and he didn't know how we won, but I knew how we won because we had a bunch of slow white guys, but they were smart white guys,
right?
And they ran our stuff pretty well. And we had we had more defenses than Victory Van. So we always changed things up. I did a lot of coaching. Maybe I overcoached, but I can tell you we had over 60 of our guys went and played Division I basketball. Another 20 played Division II or Division III. So over the years, people saved a hell of a lot of money because they played at Woodson.
100%. So with that being said, do you think your navigation? So you just dropped, and I don't know if everybody's hearing this. Like, he's coached at the All-Star games. He coached at the McDonald's All-American. Like, this is not no just easy feat where like I could just call and be like, I want to be a coach at McDonald's All-American. How did you get recognized to be able to be called to say, hey, I want you to coach at a McDonald's All-American. I want you to do A, B, C, and D. You know what I'm saying?
Morgan Wooten. When I was working on DC playgrounds as a college kid, a lot of his DeMatha players came to my playground. That was the best job I ever had, $1.43 an hour, and I played basketball for 8 hours a day. So with all those young kids, and I was playing in the Jelliff League at the same time, down in Georgetown, and Morgan took a liking to me. And so the first year I was coaching as an assistant in Annandale, I called him to see if we could get Annandale in the Jelliff League, and he said, "I'll take care of it." Nice. I mean, he was the guru. And Morgan had done more for me than anyone else in coaching. I mean, all the clinics I did, he got them because Morgan has spoken in every place in the country, and some of them twice. And if they called him and he couldn't go, he'd say, "Call Red."
Wow.
So he hooked me up with that. Plus, he and Bob Gagan were friends, the director of the Capitol Classic, who since passed away. But he told Bob Gagan, there was a Maryland-Virginia All-Star game, was how All-Star games got started. And I was invited to coach the Virginia team against the Maryland team, although the always progressive Virginia High School League wouldn't let me do it. We're 30 years behind everybody else. We still don't have a shot clock.
Right.
But anyhow,
They changed our fouls though. You know, we're going to 5 fouls a quarter now.
That's good. That's good. That's good. So work on your free throw shooting. But
and sliding on defense because we don't need to foul out early.
Well, so Morgan told Bob Gagan to have me coach the Virginia team. They wouldn't let me do it. So the next time it came around, the Capital Classic in '77, Morgan said and he had a rotating schedule: Virginia, Maryland, D.C., Inter High, and the Catholic League. It was every 6 years. It was your turn to coach. So he said, get ready to coach the Capital Classic. And I think he put me on the guillotine because the other team in '77 had Albert King, Eugene Banks, Jeff Rulin, Al Wood. It was studs. Yeah, all of them played in the NBA. And my best player was a kid named Kenny Matthews who played at Dunbar.
Yes.
And we had one high school All-American, James Radiff from Eastern. But James laid an egg, didn't play very well at all. But Kenny Matthews, I think, scored 16 or 18 points. And out of that game, he got a full scholarship to NC State. So, that's how I got started, because all because of Morgan. And then Bob Gagan and I became friends.
Connected to his son? Never mind.
Well, yeah. let's put it this way. I know Joe very well.
Yes. Okay.
And Joe Wooten's a good guy. And when he was at O'Connell and I was at Paul VI, and he brought in a bunch of big-time players because he could do that. I couldn't bring in too much at Paul VI. We brought in enough to get it done. But we played him 4 times. We beat Joe all 4 times. I must have played Morgan 30 times. I think I won 5. That's it. So, and my record's better than most people against him. You know. So, I mean, the guy won 1,200 games at ABCD camp one time. Sonny's lawyer, because Sonny loved me. Sonny told his lawyer, and the lawyer is a guy named O'Hara who went to Georgetown. He said, I hear. I'm wondering who you hearing from. He said, I hear. People tell me you're a better coach than Morgan Wooten. I said, well, here's the way it works. He's won 1,200 and I won 6. Make up your own mind.
Right. So go ahead.
You will humbly, spit out some names and things like that. How important do you think relationships are as you navigate it from then, and also just now? These people obviously feel a way about you, and you have a high respect for them. How important do you think relationships are? Because a lot of times, especially nowadays, people are transactional.
Yes.
Right? Think everything is, what can you do for me? And I'm not going to do that much for you, but I want to, how important is that?
Well, I think relationships are everything in coaching. It's connections. Morgan helped me more than anyone would ever know. And Bob Gagan, the director of the Capital Classic, and it was 40 years he was the director of the McDonald's East-West All-American Games. So Morgan told him about me, and then Bob and I became friends. And so 2 other times, I've coached the Capital Classic 3 times. Every time I would suggest somebody from Virginia, like Don McCool was at Mount Vernon one year, very good coach. And I said to Don, Bob Gagan, it's Virginia's turn to coach. Would you like to coach the game? And he said to me, how much does it pay? Wow. And so I said, it doesn't pay anything. He said, then I'm not interested. Well, Bob Gagan always gave me a gift like a grandfather clock or something, Right. But how much does it pay? Do you really love the game? It's going to take a week out of your life or a week and a half. But look who you get to work with and look who you get to play against. Right. When I coached a McDonald's game in Charlotte, we were loaded, but the other team was loaded too. And Dominique Wilkins, it was in North Carolina, and we had James Worthy and Dominique Wilkins, arguably 2 of the 10 best high school players in the country.
Right.
And they were on the East team. Ralph Sampson couldn't come into Saturday, so he wasn't a big factor. But anyhow, Dominique decided he wanted to be the MVP. Mm-hmm. So we practiced all week. We ran our stuff, and they all decided, Coach, we want to win for the East. So I said, hey, that's good. We play a team game, play together, we'll win. Well, we get in the game, and Sidney Lowe throws the ball to Dominic, and he shoots about a 23-footer that bangs off the rim. And I'm thinking, wait a minute here, what's going on?
That's not what we practiced.
And why Sidney threw it to him again the second time down the floor, he shot an air ball from about 20 feet. So I called timeout. Yeah. And the TV guy said, you can't call timeout. It's you get a timeout after 6 minutes.
Right.
And I said, I just did call timeout. So we get to the bench, and I said, Dominic, these guys want to win. And I thought you agreed with them that they want to win the game. He didn't say anything. And I said, you're shooting 25 footers. And I said, if you're going to take every shot down here, these guys want you to guard everybody down at the other end. Can you do that?
Right.
He still didn't say anything. So then I grabbed him when he went on the floor, and I said, besides, Dominique, what's your vertical jump? He said, 44 inches. And I said, then why in the hell are you shooting 25-foot
And
jump
not
shots?
get into the basket.
The next 2 times he touched the ball, he went down in the middle and tomahawked it over everybody. And he came back up the floor and looked at me and he said, how you like that, old man? And he ended up playing team game,
Yeah.
scored 19 points, did a heck of a job. But, you know, a lot of guys don't have the guts to coach great players.
Yeah.
There's no player that ever lived that I wouldn't tell what's right and what's wrong. And either you got balls or you don't have balls.
So look, so with that being said, what kind of coach were you? Were you a yeller? Were you did you ever get on fire and just snap up? Like, were you the coach that, like, you're pretty much even keeled, but when it was time to put that fire under your tail, you was gonna turn it up for a second?
Well, here's the thing about coaching, Leah. I'm not a yeller. I'm not a screamer, because I think you get more with sugar than you do with vinegar. And you know, when you sometimes in practice, and that's where your teaching has to be done, you can't ever embarrass a kid out on the floor during the game. Oh, I would light some butts up if things, but they knew. They just knew. Don't get red mad today. You know? So I never had to do it.
Okay.
Your reputation precedes you, and as these kids come up through the neighborhood and come to our camp and everything, they knew what I was, and they knew that I was 100% a player's coach. And my main thing was not winning a state championship, because I didn't have much respect for the Virginia High School League, the way they did things. We proposed some really good things, like your Green Days now.
Yeah.
We had a plan 40 years ago. Myself and a guy named John Averett from Culpeper High School were on the state basketball committee. We said we had come up with this plan that all the coaches voted for unanimously, from the last day of school to the first day of football practice. Anything goes. Legion team, the baseball guy could coach his team. Basketball coach could coach his summer league team. Football coach could put his guys in shorts and helmets.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't have any heat prostration, guys falling out during the August heat.
Right.
And everybody loved it. And they took it to the principals committee, and it got voted down 260 to 2.
That's crazy.
It's crazy, but that's the way.
And man, it was only our area though, because Prince William, you can do that, and I feel like that's why Northern Virginia, we have not enough wins and championships, because down south and mid Virginia, everybody can do exactly what you're talking about, but we got so many restrictions.
Oh,
and then
yes.
you look at the board, and it's like, this is why we don't have a lot of championships.
Yes.
You know
Well,
what I mean?
T.C. Williams can put their 8th graders on the JV team if
Right,
they want to.
right.
That's a big advantage.
Right.
That's a big advantage. And, you know, there's so many things. Football in the state of Virginia has always been king. Football coaches could propose that they do backflips at halftime, and the principals would approve it. As basketball, we make a good, sensible, resolution.
Won't do it.
No.
And we're the only sports program, especially in high school, that has to share our facilities.
Yes.
Nobody else. You don't see a basketball team on the football field. You don't see the cheerleaders out there practicing. We're the only facility that gets bumped for every other sport.
Right. Well,
all the time.
We used to do it. I mean, the football team used to come in there, but that was like a respect thing from the coaches.
Yes.
All right, once we get done practice,
Yeah,
you
once
can come
you
in
get
there.
done, that's the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
or if
Let
it's a
it-
rainy day and football
Yeah.
needs to come inside,
Right,
then you give it up.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
we just-
Let the kids work, man, and get better.
Well,
Everybody just being
It's
it's super weird. Just let the kids work and get better. And it don't matter what time of the year it is. If you want to practice early or sooner.
Well,
That's what you do outside the game.
but in Virginia, if you go to D.C. or go to the Catholic League, why do you think we lose all these players to the WCAC?
Yeah.
Because they can go to tournaments, they can play 35 games. Like we at Woodson, I won 500 and some, and won another 80 at Paulus 6, end up with 615. But that counts my All-Star wins. They won't let me do that. The guy who used to keep track of it, Marshall Johnson with the Richmond Times-Dispatch, said, Red, you won 608. not 6:15. And I said, I won those games, and they were sanctioned by the Virginia High School League, so I count them on my record. So that doesn't matter. But anyhow, the thing about in Virginia, uh, foot, everybody has this mentality that football is the big sport and it supports all the other programs. Does not.
Right.
Now, football, that helmet costs $300 or $400. All that equipment, it's an astronomical amount of outlay to put equipment on everybody. The lights,
Right.
6 or 7 officials in football. If you took the bottom line, and in basketball, if you got a good program like we had at Woodson, it's packed every night. And at the bottom line is all we need is 12 basketballs and a set of uniforms every 3 years. It's not a big expense sport.
Right.
Football is a huge expense
Right.
sport. And yet they keep saying that football supports everybody, and basketball and a good school will out-earn football 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Now, I all think because the one thing it does have more participants. There's about 120 kids involved in a football program and probably 40 to 45 in a basketball program. So I'll give them that, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
Football is expensive. So
I never thought about it like that either.
yeah, don't tell me that football supports everything. Basketball is just as important as football.
Did you ever think about jumping over and coaching the girls' side?
Well, I like when I used to watch
Had to
tennis.
think about that one. Wait.
I used to watch Tennessee play and enjoy it because if you watch the girls play, here's the difference. The boys think they're in the Air Force. Everybody's into dunking the ball. You got to fly and throw it down. And the girls' basketball is like the infantry. And if you know anything about war games, they march on the ground. They don't dunk the ball. Maybe a couple of them can, but they have to do things to get people open to get shots. They have to have structure. They have to have fundamentals. And too much the guys depend on just talent. They think if they can run and jump high, it used to be a big joke with me. We would play against athletic teams when I was playing as a player on the playground. We used to go to playground and guys could fly and dunk the ball, couldn't make a jump shot from 12 feet. They could handle,
Right.
but they couldn't make a jump shot. So to me, I'm an old school guy. I would love to coach girls basketball because they listen better. And when I had a camp, and I started a camp at Woodson back in the late '60s, and ended up leaving Woodson because of restrictions. They thought I was making more money than the superintendent, which I might have been. And they said, you're using public facilities for private gain. So they told me, and I was given the Booster Club $6,000 rent, and the dance team made $2,000 selling hot dogs and drinks.
Wow.
Everybody was happy.
Right.
And they said, the school's got to own it. That's not your camp. You're making money because it's Woodson's camp. And I said, well, bye-bye. I went over to George Mason, and the camp doubled and tripled in size. And so the last year at George Mason, when Rick Barnes was my partner, we had 900 kids in 3 sessions.
Wow.
So we got big, and it just hurt Woodson, took the money away from them. But in terms of camps, I owned the camp until the George Mason coach, he was getting 60 kids and I was getting 600. So he complained to the university president. So the athletic director, who was a good friend, said, Red, we got to be partners. So and I looked at it and I said, well, I could go back to Woodson and meet all their restrictions. They wanted to tell me how much I could pay Ralph Sampson. Couldn't pay him more than this. I couldn't pay counselors more than this. They just set up all these rules and regulations. So I couldn't exist there. So I took one look at that big pie at George Mason. I said, I'm going to get half of a big pie, or I'm going to get all of that little teeny pie over at Woodson. I don't want to do that. So I decided to be partners, and it worked out fine. And I kind of got burnt out and got tired. And so I sold the camp to George Mason. They own it now.
So it's safe to say that you think outside the box.
Oh, yes.
You've always been like that, like a visionary, kind of seeing where other people are not and willing to take it there to see things develop.
Well, Morgan Wooten was a good model. He and Joe Gallagher, who became a dear friend of mine, we were talking about connections before between Joe Gallagher and Morgan Wooten and Bob Gagan. They did more for my coaching career than anybody because Morgan sent me to all the clinics. Bob let me coach all the All-Star games. And Joe Gallagher and I are in the same club. We're 2 guys that couldn't beat Morgan to save our butt. you know, he lost 1,000,000 1-point games to Morgan, and I lost 1,000,000 2-point games to Morgan. So we were in the same club. But Joe died when he was 91, a great friend. But uh, those connections, you know, Morgan made me. Really, honest to goodness, I think I'd have done all right. But I mean, having him in your corner is like having God in your corner, because
Wow.
he was, of course, he and John Thompson never got along too well, because when John started coaching in high school, he was at St. Anthony's and Morgan was at DeMatha. Morgan and DeMatha was calling the shots. And John didn't like that. He said, "Why is this guy running everything?" You know. So I went down to a summer league game at Jelliff one night, and I saw John coming out and said, "John, why are the lights off?" He said, "We didn't play." So they couldn't agree to play. So they were always at odds with each other. But you know, I was good friends with John Thompson too. We got along fine, and Morgan was my mentor. So I got along with everybody.
It sounds like it. Is there anything outside of this? It just seems like just coaching just ended up just being your go. Was there anything else you wish you did or wanted to do, or has basketball just been the end all be all for you?
Well, I wish I'd have spent more time with my family, doing all those clinics and coaching all those all-star games and traveling to Christmas tournaments and everything. I spent a lot of time away from my family. Although a lot of times my wife would go to Myrtle Beach with me, and they put us up on the beach for a week, and she had a little vacation. And she went to Puerto Rico with me, and she went to Mexico with me. So
I bet she did go to Puerto Rico. You wouldn't going by yourself. I would have gone too.
No, but and McDonald's, you know, footed the bill in Puerto Rico, and it was great. And I did the clinic in Mexico for the American Sports Alliance, and I had to pay her airfare, but once we got there, they took care of everything. It was some fabulous experiences, but as it was, I think I shortchanged my wife a little bit, and we were together for 65 years, and she was my heart. And when I look back and reflect, I wish I'd have spent more time with my family.
With that being said, did any of your kids ever decide to want to play the game, and you wanted to invest in them?
I took my son Tim to basketball camp every year, and you know, guys like Adrian Dantley would work with him personally, and you know, he was small. When he was a junior, every year he went out for the team at Robinson, and every year he got cut. And his last year, when he was a senior in high school, he grew 7 inches in 1 year.
Oh, wow.
If he'd have been that size when he was younger, he could have probably played. But Tim's, you know, he just did that for his dad, and I didn't want to force him to do it. So, you know, he didn't continue with basketball. And of course, I have 2 daughters, and one of them was a party child, and the other was, you know, liked to stay home with mom. So neither one of them were involved in sports. Although my one daughter was a very good swimmer. And my other daughter was very good at partying. So,
with your son, when he got cut, what was those conversations like? Did you, as a guru and as a legend on the court, like look at the other coach and be like, "Yo, my kid can play," or did you just go ahead and just?
No, that's why I didn't bring him to Woodson with me. Is because if he was a marginal player, and then you decide to play your son, that can have disastrous results.
Absolutely.
So I want him to go to Robinson, be with his classmates, be with the people that lived in the community. And if you make it, you make it. And if you don't, you don't. I watched him play a lot in, you know, youth leagues and all that. And there were guys that didn't know a basketball from a grapefruit, but, you know, that was their team.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to tell them their business.
Right.
I don't believe in that. You know, you let your kid, you make it or break it on your own. You know, the trouble with parents today, and that's one of the things about coaching in high school today, the parents, as Tommy Amaker calls them, are helicopter parents.
Listen.
They've got that helicopter hovering over their kid all day long, and the first time there's a problem, they land that helicopter and run over. What can I do? How can I help? Well, they're just hurting their kid.
Yeah.
You know, their kid doesn't develop any independence. The one thing that I'm so proud of is that my mother and father got divorced before I was 2 years old. And I went to live in a foster home for 8 years. And I was kind of on my own because the lady, she worked uptown, and the father, he didn't care. He just said, if you're going to the river today, be home before the old woman gets home, or she'll switch you, and she would. If I didn't get home early, I got switched. But I was on my own from the time I was 6 years old.
How'd you get there?
Well, that's where I lived, in Beckley, West Virginia. My mother worked for G.C. Murphy's, and when they put me in a foster home when I was 2 years old, I stayed there until I was 10. So I was there for 8 years. Then when I came to D.C., my mother got remarried. but that's where I
So
was
she
born.
was away.
Well, during World War II, my stepfather to back went to the army, and I went back to my foster home and stayed there for 4 more years. I was there 8 years altogether.
And what was your mother was where at the time?
She was stationed in Buffalo, New York, so she wasn't anywhere near where I was.
Gotcha.
And she wanted me to get me back, and so she came to D.C. and I came with her. And I hated it at the time because I was into basketball big time,
Right.
and I had done well as a fifth grader to make the sixth grade team. And I could see a future in basketball because Beckley, West Virginia, has won more state championships than anybody in West Virginia. They have a great basketball program.
Right.
But when I came to D.C., it's a whole different ball game. But it was a good thing. D.C. is a good place to be a basketball player.
100%. So you threw in there 65 years of marriage.
Yes.
So we're on the real love and basketball, and we are hitting 10 years of marriage. Well, no, this will be 11 years coming up, and 13 years together. 65. How do you get to 65?
Well, when she says we're going to do this, you say yes, ma'am.
That's a good answer.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But we were always a partnership. We lived in a one little bedroom apartment in Springfield. My son slept in the same room with us. Didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. Fairfax County salary was $242 a month, and our expenses were $259. So I had to borrow against my basketball supplement, then borrow against my baseball supplement, and we always stayed ahead. Then during the summer, and I ran teen centers, and so made $500 doing that. So we'd get ahead.
Yeah.
It was a struggle, but she never flinched. She came from a well-to-do family. Her father was a lawyer for the Department of Agriculture in the dairy division, and really, being brought up over in Jefferson Manor. I don't know if you know where that is. That's down the hill from Groveton. But guys out in my neighborhood stole cars and did a little bit of everything, and I was just lucky I didn't fall in with that, But no, I wouldn't trade anything in my life because I've been on my own for a long time. And when I came to D.C., my mother worked and my father worked. I rode my bicycle to school every day, winter and summer. Lived out in Tacoma and went into D.C. to go to school 2 or 3 miles away. So I've always been on my own. So I never had to ask anybody for anything or have anybody do for me. I always did for myself. And if more kids were like that today, they're just missing so much because their parents, I call their parents pinch hitters. Shall we announce a pinch hitter today?
Right.
You're going to sit down, your parent's going to bat for you.
Yeah.
I think I had 2 parent conferences in 35 years at Woodson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, both times it was about playing time. Why isn't my son playing more? And I wanted to say, because he can't play.
But you can't say that.
No, you
but
can't.
That's the thing that I think with the game is just so different. Well, for one, amazing that you made it to 65 years, and it's always a blessing for us when we hear those type of stories. Like that's our goal. We want to be able to be married that long. So it's awesome to hear that you guys made it for that long. But then to switch it over to the parents, like us being in business for CTAB for 10 years, and me now coaching. This will be my 7th season in high school. Like parents are amazing. Like I didn't know. It was like, and that's why we're very diligent as parents. Of a player to be very.
Mm-hmm.
You have a coach. If we're that pressed, we'll just make a team and you'll just come play for us, right? but it's amazing the mindset, especially nowadays with parents and their kids. It's so disconnected compared to how when we grew up, like you said, we were on our own. We rode our bikes. We were gone. As long as you came home by the time that light was on, you were good. If you played outside, and then our kids nowadays, I'm like, yeah, let's go outside. We're going to do our workouts outside. Like, what? We don't, well, coach, I got my indoor shoes. Like, I didn't bring my outdoor, like, what? We're hoopers. Like we just play. So to hear you, saying that, especially, it was still prevalent back then as it is now. Like it's just crazy to me. It's crazy to be in this game and have to deal with so much of that.
My mother and stepfather were working people. My mother saw me play one time in high school, and I got in the game for about 4 minutes. And I don't recall her saying you played well or you did well. She just said, good game. Mm-hmm. And then she saw me play once in college, And I don't know why she'd come to see me play in college when I was a bench warmer in high school, but as it was, I came off the bench in the second half and scored 15 points in a minute and 40 seconds. That's a matter of record in the school paper.
Hold on, wait. You can't skip over that.
No,
Minute
You
and
said
14
15
seconds.
points in a minute.
minute and 40 seconds.
The only person I know who's done something like that was Reggie Miller when he
Yeah.
came back and
Well,
won that game.
But I wasn't a great shooter. You know, if you ever saw Clyde the Glide Austin play,
Absolutely.
Clyde used to come to my camp and spend a couple of days with me. And that's a great kid, great guy. But when they threw the outlet pass to Clyde, he was like a jet. He just ran everybody to the goal.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, you threw a high outlet pass, he was gone, and that was me.
Mhm.
7 of those, 6 of them were layups. I think I made 1 jump shot and 1 free throw, but it was mostly just catch and go and beat everybody to the goal.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
easy meat. They weren't. I got in the game when the starters were tired. I had a big advantage, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, my mother saw me play that one time, and that's it.
Mm.
Once in high school, once in college, and she wasn't coming back.
Right.
So you're on your own, pal.
Yeah.
Right.
And if more parents would tell their kids, fight your own battles.
Mm.
Don't expect me to
Mhm.
fight for you. If the teacher told you, you know, if you got paddled at school, you know, then you might get one at home too.
Right.
Seriously.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
but
for
that's
sure.
but that's it's
Yeah.
different nowadays. If the teacher paddles you now, you that teacher's going to jail.
That's
Like,
right. That's right. That's
it's
right.
not gonna be like that no more.
Right.
With again going back to just the career, is there anything else that you wish you would have done that you wanted to do, or I'm basketball and that's it?
Well, it would have been nice to win a state championship, but since I didn't care much for the Virginia High School League, we put all our eggs in the metropolitan DC. Our big thing was to be a top 25 team in the Washington Post poll. That's what we strive for every year. And except for 2 or 3 years, we were always rated at some time because we had a good program. But I would like to have won a state championship, and we would have. In 1969, I had a guy who went to Davidson who was an academic All-American. He tore his knee out in the district finals. And so the next week in the regionals, we got beat by a team that we were better than by, I think, 4 points. So I lost my best player. In 1983, we had a good shot, and a guy who was a McDonald's All-American, Pete Holbert, turned his ankle just in a walkthrough. We were just walking through stuff, and he stepped on somebody's ankle, and his ankle swelled up about that big. And he played, but where he was a 30-point scorer, he scored, I think, 14. So he was. So we had, and when Tommy Amaker was a senior, 83, we had T.C. Williams dead beat. We beat him in the district finals, and we were up 1 with about 10 or 12 seconds to go, and we called timeout. I told my guys exactly where they were going to take it, who was going to shoot it, where it was going to go. I said, all we got to do is get the rebound, you know, because something we do a lot of is trapping on the baseline. And I knew who they'd give the ball to. I knew where he'd go. So I said, we'd trap him on the baseline. And if he'd have had any kind of a decent shot, we would have rebounded. But he shot the ball, and it skimmed off the front rim. And my guy on the backside lost his mind and didn't bang him, didn't hit him. And the ball, and the big guy grabbed it like this, jumped up and put it back and got fouled. Now we're down 1 with like 4 seconds to go. And so he missed a free throw. And then we had a layup at the buzzer. Tommy had a layup at the buzzer, and we got beat 1, and we were better than them. And I think in 77, we lost to TC by 3 points. They went down and won the state by 30.
Wow.
If 2 teams had gone, see, they cheated us out of 5 trips.
Right.
They changed the rules.
Right.
Always we had 8 teams, and 2 teams from each region.
Right.
Well, the principal at Edison decided we should do it like the NCAA and have a Final Four. So Final Four in the region, 2 teams played for the championship, only 1 went to state.
Yeah.
So we had 4 runner-up finishes where we should have gone. We didn't go.
Yeah.
Right.
So it seemed like, the principals one year, we won the league, won the Northern District like 7 straight years, and they had a meeting of the principals and changed the rules.
They said we're gonna make sure red on red
Yeah,
win
that's
nothing.
exactly right. So at that point, you know, we played all the teams, and the regular season champion was the champion.
Yeah.
They said, no, the regular season, all that time you play, the tournament one night, that's the champion. And don't you know, the first year they changed the rules, Falls Church held the ball the whole game, and I had a bunch of tall guys. We couldn't press a pair of pants, But so we
So
ended up
no doctor. You never want to be a doctor or a lawyer. That was this basketball's life.
just I think I was born to be a coach. I think I was born to be a coach. And your husband was talking about relationships. My wife passed away a year ago, and about 2 months ago, one of my players who lives in El Paso came to visit one of his teammates, and he called and said, "Can I take you to lunch?" So we went to Vienna Inn, had a chili dog and a lemonade, and rehashed old things. The thing I remember about him was Jim O'Brien was the big star at that time who went to Maryland. He was a high school All-American, one of the best high school players I ever saw. He was 6'8", point guard. And we noticed that when he used a spin move, you'd like him to pull it back with the same hand and get it back out front. When he did a spin move,
He switched hands
and picked it up with his other hand, and we went behind him and stole it 3 times. Patton did, and that was the difference in the game. We ended up beating him for the championship. He beat us one time, but it wasn't when it counted. So he came, took me to lunch, and then he went back to El Paso. And the reason that we were close is because he was a football player who also played basketball. But the football coach didn't do anything for him. He wasn't interested in getting kids in school. So I got him a scholarship to a junior college in Colorado. And he did well and went to El Paso on a scholarship to UTEP. And then he married the athletic director's daughter. Lovely girl. He came to visit me with his wife one time. He was drafted by the New York Giants in one of the late rounds and decided he was going to go into coaching. And he coached, and then he was an assistant principal, and he got to be a superintendent out there. When we had a celebration of life for my wife, this huge bouquet of flowers showed up. Must have cost $200. It was from him.
Wow.
And he had met my wife, and he knew my wife as a player because all the players knew her. And he said, "Coach, you had the best wife in the world."
Oh, warmed your heart, huh?
Yeah.
That thing right
Make
there.
you cry.
Yeah.
Now, about you and your husband,
Yes.
you can make that. I can see you got a chance. 65 is a hard number, but the two of you seem to have a good 50-50 relationship, and that's the key. If one person dominates, it won't last. If you get along and you give him the floor sometimes and he gives you the floor sometimes, it'll all even out and you'll be together forever.
Yes.
Yeah.
But one person can't dominate, and it's not easy to make 65 years, but
especially that in today's day and age, it's a lot going on in today's day and age. But no, I appreciate that because that's definitely one of our goals is just to be we like to be traditional.
yes,
We like some of the new things nowadays, but we're like very old school with our way raising our kids and the way our marriage is, and just we have accountability partners and everything because we want to thrive. We want to be one of the couples in this age that makes it, and not 72 days later and a divorce because you talk to me crazy or whatever, something stupid that we deal with.
Well, now you have to understand. There might be some time when somebody talks to you crazy, but you might talk to them crazy, but you resolve that real quick.
Very quickly.
How you do
Communication.
I'm sorry. That was my fault.
Absolutely.
And you heard any players lately say, "My bad"?
Right.
They don't know what that means.
No, they
If
don't.
I throw a bad pass, that's on me.
They'll say, "No, it's your fault.
Right.
You should have ran
They
faster."
fussing right in the middle of the game.
And I have a game that I've developed years ago called the 5 game. It's been published. I've written a number of articles for basketball magazines, and one of my articles was in the Coach's Digest about my 5 game. It's a full court, 100-point game where you keep score. Everything's keep score. And
we run it. We run it at Woodson. We run it. Thanks, Coach Neri.
at Paul VI, I ran it every day for 30 minutes from all the shooting spots, and it develops your ball handling. It develops your footwork. If you can't get your feet right, you can't shoot the ball right. So, we worked hard on that. And none of our players ever got a walking call because they knew how to start and stop with the ball. But there are crooks in this game. We're playing in the Virginia State Private School Championship, and we're up like I don't know, 3 or 4 points with a minute to play, and 2 walking violations showed up. And they ended up Benedictine ended up winning it by 1 point. And they just in Richmond, they'll cheat you in a heartbeat. Joe Gallagher told me, he said, you go to Richmond, he said, you remember one thing.
Yeah.
Virginia is for lovers, because every time I go to Richmond, I get screwed.
So let's end on 2 things. What is the highest moment you can think over your lifespan? One thing that hands down takes the cake over everything, and then what's one of the best learning lessons you've encountered? Let's do the learning lesson first. What's the best learning lesson you encountered over your career, over your lifespan?
Well, when I went to live in the foster home, I had an Aunt Minnie. She was a girl that was raised by the same people that the foster parents that raised me. She was a teacher, and she would take me to school with her a couple of days a week. She told me, this is how you learn about competition. I used to beg her, Minnie, take me to school with you, because she would read to me at night, and she was my first educator. And she said, Bud, if you learn to tie your shoes, I'll take you to school. And I was only 4 years old, 4 and a half, going on 5. And she said, here's how you do it. She showed me how to tie my shoes. And damn, don't you work. When she went to school, I worked all day until I get those shoes tied. And when she came home, I tied them, and she said, I'll take you to school tomorrow. She was, along with my foster parents, a major influence in my life. Just a great lady, and she taught me things I didn't learn until I was in high school.
Okay.
So that's a highlight. And coaching wise, and family wise, I have to say, when my wife and I started dating in the summer of 1957, she had known me for about a year or 2, because we had a lot of mutual friends, and we go to parties and dance together, and we liked each other, and we were friends. But when we started dating, the first time that we went out on a date, we pulled up in front of her house, she turned to me and she says, I think I love you. And I said, are you sure? She said, yes, I'm sure.
Wow.
And so then I said, I love you too. So I wrote a poem about my wife. It's called My Beautiful Girl. And when she said that, I said, when the girl of your dreams says she loves you, you don't stammer. You don't stutter. You say, I love you too. And 65 years, that was a highlight. And of course, when each one of your children are born, it's a unique experience,
Absolutely.
But as far as coaching goes, the highlight for me is the relationship that I have with my players. Tommy Amaker sends me a plane ticket and a hotel reservation at the Charles Hotel, $350 a night, to come up to his camp every year.
Wow.
And take notes, not his camp, but his clinic. He has an NBA coach comes in. He's had Mike D'Antoni, he's had Doc Rivers, all of them have come to his camp. And I've got a chance to meet and talk basketball, those guys. And he is like a son to me. His father was not in the home. So we had all his visits. When his Duke came, Virginia came, everybody came, Boston College. We had them all at my house.
Where is he still? Where is he now?
Tommy's the head coach at Harvard.
Okay.
He played at Duke, was on All-American. He coached there as an assistant for 9 years. He got the head job at Seton Hall, took him to the Sweet 16, I think, the first year he was there. He went to Michigan because Mike Krzyzewski told him it was one of the best jobs in the country. It was not. Their facilities were built in 1938. He had to get a businessman from Detroit to put up $100,000 to put flat screen TVs and sofas in. It was a scrub program, and he got fired at Michigan after 6 years because he didn't make the NCAA tournament. And that seems to be, they hired him to clean up the mess. All the guys from Fabulous Five got paid. Everybody knows that. The businessman from Detroit gave him, I think, $600,000 over a period of time while they were there. So they hired Tommy to clean up the mess, and he did. He cleaned it up, and he didn't make the NCAA tournament because he couldn't recruit. He couldn't beat Indiana. He couldn't beat Michigan State on an in-state kid. Couldn't beat Indiana for a Chicago kid, or Illinois too. And then there's Purdue. It was just the Big Ten was brutal. And it's a Midwest league, and he's an Eastern guy. So he didn't do as well as he wanted to, although he made $1 million a year for 6 years. So that's not chicken
That's not
feed.
too bad.
No.
It sounds like a win to me.
The day he got fired, the athletic director from Harvard called him and said, I'd like you to come here and be our coach. And he wasn't sure whether he wanted to do it. So he called me and I said, Tommy, you're a coach. Go see what he has to say. and he took the job, and he doesn't make, he's turned down. He turned down Miami before Larinaga. He turned down Wake Forest. He turned down Georgia Tech.
Wow.
Before they hired Billy Donovan, the athletic director, the general manager from the Thunder in Oklahoma City, was up there.
Right.
And I said, "Who's that guy?" And he said, "That's a guy from Oklahoma City. He says, been here 3 or 4 times to see me this year."
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't coming just for his health. He recognized a young coach that had charisma. So he's been offered many chances to go and make a lot more money. But he has an endowed chair. The guy who's owned Staples, who passed away, loved Tommy and endowed a chair. The basketball and the football coach at Harvard are the only 2 that have an endowed chair for them, like a chairman of the physics department or something. His salary is $750,000 a year, and you can live on that. That's not bad.
Not at all.
And to just tell you how dedicated he was, I told him, I said, "Now we're going to have this celebration of life for Mrs. Jenkins, but you're going to start practice, and, I don't expect you to come. I think you got to stay and take care of your business." He said, "You kid?"
Yeah.
Wouldn't miss it.
That's amazing. Well, Coach Tommy, I would like to meet you. I'm coming with him to the next clinic, just FYI. So, is there anything you want to close out on as we wrap up this episode?
Well, I know that you and your husband love the game. You've been doing it for 10 years, and that's a start. I mean, there aren't enough people in basketball today that really and truly love the game, that are dedicated to the game, that want to help young people be better at the game. And I'm convinced, as I'm sitting right here, that you've got Woodson girls team off to a good start. And I know that you're going to win. And I know, as I do with Doug Craig, if there's anything I can do to support your program, I'm going to do that, because Woodson, to me, even though it's not going to be WT Woodson anymore, it's going to be, I think, G. Carter Woodson or something.
They make a vote on like November 9th.
Well, I talked to the lady in Braddock, Megan. Her husband played for me. She's a school board member. And I told her I wanted to come to the school board because I thought that somebody that had served Woodson over a long period of time would be more appropriate than somebody else. And I told her that I would certainly vote for Bob Phipps, who was our principal for many years, loved basketball, loved me, and I loved him. We just, when you have a principal that really supports you, then, you're halfway home.
Yeah.
But she's
called a Red Jenkins High School and just be done with it.
Well, I got 5 votes. I did.
I believe it. I believe it.
She told me you got 5 votes. And I don't know whether there are 13 school board members or whatever.
Yeah.
But the overwhelming majority said, no, we're going to keep it Woodson. And the fellow that they're going to name it after was a black activist. And he was very active in the early days of civil rights for blacks in our country. So I told her, I said, okay. She said, so if you're going to come and lobby for Bob Phipps, I don't want you to come to the meeting. I said, Megan, I'm not coming. It's going to be Woodson. You're calling the shots. And I think the guy you're naming it after is very appropriate.
Yeah.
So it's going to stay Woodson. And hopefully the school will be there for a long, long time. And I hope, I don't know whether you have any aspirations to coach in college, but several of our girls coaches have gone on. Cheryl Thompson, who worked with me in the camp. That's something I had. I always had a girls' camp too. We had 500 boys, but we'd have 100 girls. And she ran the girls' camp on her own, ran it.
Which I just had 100 this year. Just
did
for
you
the
really?
record, I did.
Hey,
Got right under 98.
That's right. And the day I came to talk, you weren't there.
Because I was with him traveling the road doing Boo Williams stuff.
That's all right. That's all right. Everything went well. And Pat Neary he's a great guy. I play golf with Pat. Pat is always there to help.
Yes, 100%.
He's not going to tell you what to do, but if you need a good suggestion, he'll give you a good suggestion.
We have been on the same accord all the time. I appreciate Coach Neary all the time.
Yes.
All the time. He's amazing.
And so if you have aspirations to coach in college, you have to think hard about it. Because number one, I had numerous chances. I had a chance to go with Lefty at Maryland in 1980, and I had a chance to go with Ted Owens to Oral Roberts at one time because I worked at Kansas camp 2 summers. That's another time away from my family. Gail Catlett, who became the coach at West Virginia, invited me out to Kansas to work the camp, and I loved it. Had JoJo White there and a lot of great coaches. Gene Cady, who was a coach at Purdue, was the guy I coached against in camp. It was a great experience. But I would say that when I had a chance to go to Maryland, I talked to Morgan, who was my mentor, and he said, some of us are cut out to be high school coaches. You have such a great impact on a young kid's life if you're coaching in high school. I'm not sure that exists in college today because you got NIL and people getting paid.
Yeah.
So if you have a chance to go and be a college coach, Cheryl Thompson would tell you when she went to Georgetown, wasn't all it was cracked up to be. You're going to be away from your family, be away from your kids, be away from your husband. I would say this. If you love coaching basketball and you love impacting on young people's lives, stay in high school because that's where you can do the most good. And if you love the game, that's what it's all about.
100%. No, I'm with you. I would love just to offer to see if I ever got to that point, but I would stay. I have 2 little boys and a husband that need me. They can't function without me.
No, it's probably true. It's true. Truer than you
true.
know.
Right.
Well, we want to thank you for coming on the Real Love of Basketball show. This was another amazing talk. I hope you guys liked it, love it, subscribe to this, and make sure you tune in next week for our next special guest. See y'all soon.
Yeah.
Ask me how I'm living, I'm telling them great. Ask me how I did it, I'm telling them grace. Yeah. Hey, ask me how I did it, I'm telling them grace. Ask me how I'm living, I'm telling them great. Ask me how I did it, I'm telling them grace. Ask me how I'm living, I'm telling them great. New me, no time to waste. Look at me, you see I don't play. I keep running, no out of shape.